Right. It's time for a closer look story, and it's we wanted to take a look at one that really has had an impact on the IT industry in general. Uh, you may think that half a century is a blink of an eye, depending on where you live, but for an IT business, that's a really long time. And Microsoft has been making a lot of noise celebrating its 50th anniversary. The celebration brought together three Microsoft CEOs: Bill Gates, Steve Ballmer, and Satya Nadella. Think about all the products that you've used over the years. You're probably thinking of Windows or Office, but are you thinking about CoPilot? Because I'll tell you that while CoPilot is not as old as those venerable software packages that a lot of us still use, it's very much at the center of those celebrations because of the hype and the promise of what AI is going to be bringing us. Now, we could probably sit here and name on two hands and all of our feet all of the Microsoft products that have come and gone over the years. But I guess the question that I want to lead off here as we kind of talk about this 50th anniversary, Al, is do you think Copilot is going to be on that list? And is it going to be up there with things like Windows 3.1, or is it going to be down there with Microsoft Bob?
Well, I think I've had no personal experience with Copilot, and it's interesting. I've been using a Mac as my main machine for a long time, and the launches around Copilot and the interesting laptops that have been coming out with Copilot support make me keen to dip my toe back in again and see what Windows is like as a desktop and as a mobile platform. At Cloudfield Day a little while ago, a couple of the other delegates were talking about using Copilot as part of their workflow and had found that it had made massive strides in actually being usable to allow them to do things like generating Terraform or CloudFormation templates. And so it seems very interesting that Copilot is getting a lot more capabilities, and we are seeing people using Copilot to do actual useful things. So maybe we'll see Copilot hanging around for a while. Of course, like Microsoft, I'm not particularly young anymore, and so I'm deeply cynical. And maybe that's why I haven't yet gone out and bought myself a Copilot PC. My career definitely started with Microsoft on the desktop at the time that I was a network engineer, and progressively my network certifications became less important as my Microsoft certifications became more important. Proxy Server 2 certification, absolutely vital to me as my career progressed. But it really has, for me, been a theme right throughout. Although I'm on a Mac today, I'm still using Outlook and Microsoft 365 as my mail service. So that transition that Microsoft has gone through from being all about an operating system to being all about an office suite to being all about a back office suite to now being all about Azure and then AI with Azure, definitely my career has followed some of that same arc of being local desktop towards being server based and towards then being cloud based. And maybe my career is taking me to be AI based, and I'll get that AI implant so I can think more clearly, particularly when I'm tired and haven't had nearly enough coffee in the morning like I had this morning. Tom, you said you've also been impacted by Microsoft as part of your career, and as a networking guy, I didn't think Microsoft played heavily in the networking space.
Well, at first they didn't. I mean, when I cut my teeth as a nibbling working on computers, like I had to figure out how to get MS DOS 5.0 to work with Windows 3.1. I can remember my first big upgrade was going from 3.1 to 3.11 for 32-bit disk access. I'll admit, I was in line in 1995 to buy Windows 95. And then as my career progressed and I started working on more than just desktops, I started working on networking. I had a Windows machine when I worked at my last job as a senior network engineer. In fact, it wasn't up until I think it was about a year and a half before I left that I finally broke down and bought a MacBook Air. And you're right. Like all you need to know about the dominance of Microsoft products in the industry is the fact that when I worked at IBM as a co-op, we were required to use Lotus Smart Suite because IBM owned Lotus at the time. But for anybody that was customer facing that had to send emails and documents to people, they had a permission to install Microsoft Office on their PCs because, as it turns out, if you're going to talk to the rest of the world, you've got to use Microsoft Word. Like that's just a given. Maybe not so much Excel, maybe not so much PowerPoint, although I would say the fact that the vernacular for a presentation, no matter what you're running it in, has become PowerPoint, kind of like Kleenex or Velcro. The key here to me is that for everybody who ran out and lined up to buy Microsoft Windows, for everybody who made the leap to get new server hardware to install Windows 2000 instead of Windows NT4, I don't see that today. People are not lining up to get CoPilot. I mean, yes, they're buying new PCs, but I don't think they're buying them for CoPilot. I think they're buying them because they need to replace their existing devices, and it just so happens that they have MPUs to run CoPilot. I also see a lot of people that are not upgrading to Windows 11. I mean, I am not. Like, my machine does not have a TPM 2.0 chip in it, so I can't upgrade to Windows 11, but Windows 10 is running just fine. And that kind of release schedule, like with Windows 10, really, when it had that rolling release schedule, in Windows 11, like I haven't felt compelled to upgrade. I know that Windows 10 is going to be end of life at the end of the year, but I don't care. Like that's the thing that I think is so fascinating to me is I used to be the person who had to have the most bleeding edge, cutting edge operating system, and now I don't really mind that much being a little bit behind the curve because it's a stability problem. And look, if you're going to work on PCs, if you're going to work in the client industry, you've got to know how to work on Windows because most of the problems that you're going to fix are Windows based. And before you guys go into the comments and tell me that I'm a Mac fanboy, I'm not, because the majority of the problems that are faced by Windows PCs are related to the fact that they support every piece of hardware under the sun. I've said it on the rundown a number of times. Something like 70% of all of the problems, probably higher than that, 70% of the problems on a Windows machine are caused by bad drivers. You don't see this problem on Mac or Mac systems because the driver control is so tight. Like the memory management is so much better. Yeah. All you Darwin fanboys out there, come on, leave me a comment and tell me that it's all because it's running a BSD style kernel, and we'll agree to disagree. I think that Windows, as ubiquitous as it is facing an identity crisis because most people don't care what is running on their PC now. They care about the application load more than the operating system load, and so that's why you've seen this move to have like a Windows App Store, a Microsoft App Store. It's why it actually didn't work that well in Windows 10, and a lot of people just don't care. Microsoft still has the game industry wrapped up, right? Like you're never going to see a lot of developers that are writing code to run games on Mac without them having run on Windows first. I mean, Steam has helped a little bit there, but I mean, there's a reason why I still have a Windows PC. It's because I run games on it. And I think that until Microsoft can pivot away from that, like there's no value for Copilot for me because of the way that I use my system. And I know a lot of people use services, and I know a lot of people love the idea of, Copilot replay or image generation or stuff like that. But that gets away from the core of what Microsoft is. Is Microsoft an operating system company and a utility application company, or are they just software that runs on top of a thing? Because if we've gotten to the point where it's more about the apps and less about the operating system, then the true transformation really has happened from Gates to Balmer to Nadella. But then that means that the underlying intellectual property of the operating system is kind of invalid at that point. We might as well be running Linux.